a considered a high grade decking. It's a very, it's.
There's a softball for you, Chris. So Chris, I say that because Chris has on the platform right now 5/4 by 6 larch decking.
I saw that. And where are you are you bringing that in from Russia? Or are you sawing up in Canada, or what are you doing?
That's a Canadian produced product. Yeah, we do a sort at a mill. All the Doug fir eventually gets cut into Japanese programs and exported. So we do a primary sort in the log at the mill. And so that is a purely Western larch, which will have very similar properties to the Siberian in terms of tight knot. And it'll be a little browner. It won't be as light. I understand the Siberian larch is kind of the lightest in appearance and color wise, but knot structure, grain structure will all be very, very similar.
Yeah, I think that
All right, well, you guys are hijacking Paul's call, and he's going to get mad at me if I allow this to continue.
No problem. In fact, I welcome the discussion. I think that part of the value of this call, you know, as we evolve this digital marketplace, is encouraging a lot of these discussions and encouraging a lot of different kinds of participants on the exchange, where we're not limited to the traditional distribution or models, if you would, even labels that we put on companies. But there's buyers and sellers of lumber, and it happens all along the way. So we're going to talk about that a little bit this morning, because we have some different kinds of users on the platform. So with that, I'm just going to get started. It looks like we've got over 40 people here, so we're just going to get started here this morning. Again, welcome everybody. I'm Paul Dean with Materials Exchange. This is our Smart Market call that we run every Friday morning. Every Friday morning at 10 o'clock Eastern. We try and keep this thing primarily to a half hour at the most, just so we don't take over your day. And we cover things like what's new on the MX system, resources, tips and tricks, any new companies that might be coming on board, of course. And then we talk about mill and market updates. And this week, in this week's version, we're going to talk about new products, new companies, and then we're going to focus primarily on the market and OSB. So the digital lumber marketplace that MX is creating right now, of course, we've got our traditional dimensional lumbers, all the various different sizes and species. We've got panels, of course, the mainstream fir plywood, pine and OSB kinds of panels. We've got them in all sorts of different grades, studs, selects, MSR, dense, prime and premiums. And of course, all of this material is available in many different, on prompt or by truck or by rail. So our product lines are expanding as more and more companies are coming on board. We also have new products that have just arrived this week. Now, MX's Materials Exchange is setting a standard with a premium grade that we've developed. Of course, when you're talking about a number 2 and better kind of a program, that's a fairly broad program. So we've upped it a notch, and we've created an MX premium label. And when you look on the exchange and you see anything that says premium on it, for example, SPF might be marketed under a Highline name, or Doug fir and larch or hem fir might be marketed under a Stim Pro kind of a designation. And this week we're proud to announce that we now have a new MX premium grade for Doug fir and larch mixes, dry Doug fir, and hem fir studs as well. So that's now available on the platform. When you go to the platform, and you'll see, of course, when you're building out your watch list, and you'll see this happens to be our current watch list as of yesterday. You'll see everything from Southern SPF to Southern Yellow Pine, Euro, et cetera, and right down there at the bottom is our Western Larch 5/4 decking that we just added last week. And of course, when you add these to your watch list, you'll see all the different kinds of grades that are available. Again, there's the MSRs at the bottom, and then you'll see the radius edge decking that we just added to the platform. So it's important to remember to log in and out daily on the platform, because when you do that, you'll catch all the system refreshes and the additions and the updates to the marketplace. Now, remember that your watch lists themselves stay in place. You don't have to redo those each and every time. When you build out your watch list, those will remain forever. But every time you log in and out, you'll get system updates, the system refreshes, and then of course the pricing on the system will be reflected daily, and then of course in live time when you're on the platform. In terms of companies, remember that we're selling to the entire lumber marketplace, everybody from buying groups to LBM retail, dealers, component guys, distributors, industrial people. And it's important to remember too that not only can you be a buyer on the platform, you can also be a seller on the platform. So that's important to remember. Specifically, I think last week we talked a little bit about some new retail lumber yards that we added around the country: Ogden Adams, Beatty, and Haywood Lumber. We added some new distribution in BP Wood and Hawk. We also added a company called Burgess Manufacturing, which is in the manufacturing, pallet, and packaging industry. And so that was last week. And then this week, we've got several new companies that we just added to the mix. Canby Builder Supply. You just heard Jim Rodway here a second ago. His name is Holly Rodway on his label there, but that's Jim Rodway from Canby. We just added Amherhart Distribution this past week. We added White's Lumber Supply, a retail lumber yard down in the Atlanta, Georgia area. We added ALL Roofing Materials, who is a big roofing distributor and part of RCS. And then we added Hutchison Lumber, which is a farm, ag, and feed supply distributor. But what these companies all have in common is they all buy and sell a ton of wood and a ton of different kinds of lumber products. So we're happy to introduce and welcome them to the mix. As I mentioned last week, we've got roughly 20% of our users are mills and manufacturers. Component guys are another 23%. Our LBM retail lumber group, which we focused on fairly heavily, is now in excess of 40%. This was a slide I showed last week. But it's important to realize that, out of the retail lumber dealers themselves, 70% of them also belong to buying groups. So the exchange is not simply an exclusive new platform, if you would. We're welcoming everybody on the exchange. And even though LBM retail lumber dealers are on the platform, they also belong to buying groups. So it's just important to realize that the platform appeals to all these different kinds of customers and suppliers that can sell in full truckloads. I want to, on that note, I'd like to shift gears. And if Leo, if you could unmute your.
Hey, Paul, just a little housekeeping. Ash just said there's some guys that can't get in. Just want to make sure that you're seeing all the people to let in.
I'm not letting them in. We had their auto join. The only thing I can think of is maybe they didn't get the original email.
Could be user error. Okay, not a problem.
We'll take a look. So with that, Leo, if you're available, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to introduce Leo Calantuono, who is with Grove Wholesale Lumber. Grove has been a wholesale distributor that is on the platform and has been very successful in selling product. And so, Leo, I'd like to if you could talk a little bit about your background for a second, and then we'll talk about Grove and your use of the platform.
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, a little bit background. I worked for a sawmill sales company for about 13 years, and then last year joined Grove Wholesale Lumber. So I've been in the business for, I guess, going on 14, 15 years now. And a little bit about Grove, which we have to start putting some products on there that we manufacture, but we're actually a manufacturer of pallet components, pallet boards, stringers, two-way, four-way stringers. We also make pallets. We have 2 facilities in Minnesota and one in Wisconsin, but also we wholesale and distribute lumber. We bring in about 1,000 cars of lumber into our Minneapolis plant and about 1,500 trucks to the other 2 plants because they're not on rail. So yeah, I've been using this platform for about 6 months now. We're a small business, so we really don't have the resources to, reach out on a daily basis to new customers outside of our area. So this has kind of been a cool way to reach new people that we don't even know who they are and where they're from. So it's been a very good supplement to our selling style.
So we talked a little bit yesterday, and we talked about some of the successes you've had moving material. And one of the things that you mentioned was credit. And can you talk a little bit about that, about some of the benefits of the exchange there?
Yeah, I mean, at least for our company, when somebody new wants to buy from you, or you find a new customer, I mean, it takes some time to go get the credit set up, 5 to 7 days, I think, for at least our company on average. So on here, it's cool because that new person that wants to buy your lumber, everything's already set up, so there's no credit risk, and the whole process moves faster. And yeah, I mean, you get paid, you get paid very quick. So that's a good piece of it, especially with lumber prices, how high they are right now. Just with, I mean, you know what lumber's trading at. So we tread a little lightly when we open up the new customers. So yeah, it takes the worry out of it. So the accounting department really likes selling on this platform.
One of the things that I love about the platform and how it applies to a company like Grove is that when we run our businesses and we're in our lives, we're in our own little bubble. So if you're an LBM dealer, your world of lumber is just home building, basically, right? And when we have this digital network that has everyone connected, it allows crossover. And Leo had a great example of that earlier this year. He sold a truck of number 3 that he had brought in basically for an industrial customers that he has. Well, it ended up going to an LBM dealer outside of his bubble, outside of his region, who uses number 3. So I think it's important for us as lumber people to remember, even though our bubble uses lumber in one way, we have crossover into other bubbles. And, I think when we're analyzing markets, it's really important to look and see what's happening in other parts of the world, other parts of other industries. And the network, the benefit of the network is that we can get into each other's worlds and have trading partners that you've never had before.
Yeah, that's a super good point. I mean, yeah, our bubble, and I should do a better job explaining. I mean, the primary grade that we carry on the ground is economy and number 3. So we live in the low grade world, and as we know, number 3 and some economy right now is being put into truss applications, plate stock, wall panels. I mean, they're getting a little creative on how to utilize low grade because of the pricing. So yeah, that's a good point, Mike. This has helped us get into other industries that haven't been on our radar, in recent years. And I'll back up a second too. Sorry, this is a small family-owned company, second generation. 2 brothers own it. The dad just retired, so this whole idea of new technology and changing the way we sell kind of fits into what our future plans are. Getting creative, and this kind of, again, platform kind of fit into our vision as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, Leo. Appreciate that.
Hey guys.
Okay. And then finally, were there any other challenges or anything you found using the exchange? Anything you'd like us to focus on or ask about as we move forward?
I guess I was thinking about that after we spoke last night. And this is totally self-inflicted, but because I'm the only one in the company right now that can put stuff on there. And again, that will change. But it would be cool, I think, to when you list something, if there was a feature to keep it listed into the next day. So if I knew I was traveling Monday morning and I couldn't get to the platform at the time of open, but I have some stuff I want to put on there, it would be, it'd be cool if it stayed on there, I guess in the future, if that makes sense.
So
it's a little bit of a catch-22 as well. Sorry, Paul. It's a little bit of a catch-22 as well. We had that for a while, and we disabled that function because of what was happening with prices. So we want to be cognizant to what you guys need as buyers and sellers as well, and don't want to put somebody in that position where they list something at 1025. We've got an overnight move, and suddenly.
Yeah, by the way, that was Joe Campagna, who was our Chief Technology Officer. So many of you interact with Joe typically by email when he's resetting your passwords or doing setups or anything like that, adding locations or adding users or people. So it's nice to put a face with a name. So that's Joe Campagna.
Thanks,
All
Paul.
right, so Leo, thank you very much for that. We appreciate that visit, and we appreciate your support. Ashley, you there, if you can unmute yourself. And if you can weigh in and tell us a little bit about what you've seen in the market.
There you go, Paul. How is that coming through?
Good. Yep.
Good. So the market's trying to do something this week. Obviously, people that look at the futures market, which everybody likes talking about it, very few people use it. Moved around, tried to put in like a double top, and it's trying to trade. What we noticed is we had the most bids on the system and offers on the system we've ever had this week. That's a good thing. We've had the most product we've ever had this week. One day we had up over 200 cars and trucks. I'd like to think that that's us doing a great job marketing and getting our name out there, which I think that's part of it, but also a lot more people have inventory in flux. We've had one of our successes, retail yards listing excess inventory that they have off of contracts and selling it back into the market to other retail yards, other distributors. So we make information not only flow one way, we make it flow back the other way. So I want to challenge retailers out there. If you have extra product to sell, put that in the system and turn that into cash instantly. Instead of waiting 120 days for something or 6 months to turn that into cash, turn it into cash in 3 days. So best bids, best listings. One of our featured transactions this week, we've challenged and asked a lot of our providers, our sellers, mills, and wholesale distributors to carve out inventory just for us. And they've done that. One Southern Yellow Pine mill has done that for us. And we've done some transactions with them this week to small truss plants that never had access to direct inventory or information. They were getting 1 and 2 step, which is fine. But they actually were able to go on and look at real-time pricing for the items they use directly to their location. So a real nice sized truss plant in east of Cincinnati, sitting in his vacation house in Florida, was able to go on and buy inventory for his yard directly from a provider of Southern Yellow Pine. Southern Yellow Pine person's excited because they carved that out, challenged us to move the inventory for them, and we did. So that was good. So I wrote the 3 things that we do up here. And as Leo said, from his little orbit, we reach more of the world for him on lumber pricing, both bids and asks. We show you the specific pricing and delivery, and we make it actionable so you can buy and sell, and we save you time and money. Those are the 3 things that we do. So my challenge to everyone is place actually active bids if you're in there. Help us support these people that are helping support us. There's 7 more loads of Southern Pine up there we'll put out. If you need help doing it, we'll put them up there for you. I'll leave it with this. Had a comment from one of our users in Nebraska. He said, "You saved me over 27 calls a day." That's powerful. So with that said, market is in flux right now. Prices are all over, but we're seeing the activity. If you really want to see what the bids and asks are, come to our screen and look. If you're not signed up and new on here, hit the register button on mxlumber.com and I'll have you on Monday moving lumber around. Paul, back to you.
Very good. Thank you. And Chris Bouchard, thanks for your comments. Someone else supporting the fact of having pricing carrying over, or he's talking about challenging his products listed for the market open by 5 a.m. PST. So understand, we hear that loud and clear. We do have limits on the market hours, and we certainly have to deal with time zone support, as Jim Rodway can attest to, dialing in from California here this morning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Wisniewski, who will introduce our guest speaker, our other guest speaker this morning, Jim Schumacher, who also runs Shoes Lumber Report. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. And I'm really excited to have Jim Schumacher talking to you guys. He's been in the lumber industry since the late 90s, worked for Woodinville Lumber, Power Lumber, and now he's working at Roof Truss Supply. And he can talk a little bit about what they're doing. He started the Shoe Lumber Report, and it was as a kind of a perk for, now Jim has always been on the sales side. He's not a buyer, which is, I think, the perfect perspective for his report. He creates this report to send to his customers, just to keep them up to speed on what's happening in lumber. So I'm going to ask just a couple quick questions of Jim so we can understand kind of a little bit about the report. And who's the typical reader of your report?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Good question. Thanks, Mike. And I appreciate everybody letting me jump on board here. So yeah, typical reader, and I'll kind of go back to when I first started that. I came up with the idea of starting this way back when email started in the mid 90s. So that it's this year will be 25 years total. And it was a simple email I sent out, but I had a customer that, back when builders didn't subcontract everything, when they actually built and they worked over the weekends and they did everything, I'd have a guy by the name of Jerry Wells, custom home builder in my market, that would call me every Monday morning on a random basis because he had a buyer come through and he sold a house. And he's like, hey, I built, that particular model back in, whatever, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. It's like, I need an update so I can finalize my numbers to sell, to provide a selling price to this customer. So, it's like, we know we're not busy on Monday morning. So I would go through, have to refresh that bid on that plan, send him the information. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I solve the problem of him having the information generally of when he needs it? So I kind of just started to kind of create a composite number and update information. So it started very small, but it was basically to solve a builder's problem of bugging me on a Monday morning. So.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You just said something, composite number.
Mhm.
I know at the bottom of your report, which by the way, his report comes out every weekend.
Yep.
And it uses the data, pricing data that comes out of the price reports. It's just his analysis of it. What do you put in the Shoes Lumber composite number?
Sure. Yeah, based in the Seattle market, I'm up in the Puget Sound areas where I've been my entire career. So we use a lot of mostly kiln-dried coast hem fir, a little bit of Doug fir, but what I track is I track 2x4 coast, 2x6 coast, 2x10, meaning kind of on the coast on the hemlock for like joist. So basically 2x4, 2x6 for plate, 2x10 for joist, 4x10 timber on the Doug fir side, Portland number, kind of for header stock, 8-foot coast PET, 2x4. 8-foot and lower, and then 7/16 Seattle print, and then 3/4 OSB commodity print. So those combined 7 items basically are what consist of my composite number that I use. And all the numbers I pull and I have pulled forever, just everything that's printed out of random links, so I can communicate to my customers that I just provide percentage changes in a general rough aspect. I can't actually give them prices specifically, so it kind of gives them a flow of kind of how their pricing would be expected to move as the days and weeks and the months go by.
I think that composite idea is so cool. And with all of the pricing data being digital now and the pricing data coming out of MaterialsXchange being digital, I would encourage everyone to build your own composite that is local to you. Hey, Paul, could you put Dwayne on mute? Dwayne Kurtz, he's bleeding through
A little black background noise there, yeah.
So yeah, I like that composite thing, and I would encourage people, if they have a question about that, they could probably reach out to you and you could probably help them with that.
You bet.
Then, the last thing that as I look at your report, and the thing I really like is the CME to cash comparison. And that for me is a really important thing to look at. Then you know what kind of market you're in. Is it a forward pricing market like we are now, where the futures are such a discount to the cash market? Or can you expect it to be a basis trade or a hedging market where, guys are putting wood on the ground and using the futures to protect that, and you can expect a lot more truckload type deliveries and offerings in the future?
Oh yeah, I know exactly, Mike. And to that point, the species that we use in our market, we don't use southern yellow pine, which is basically what a futures contract is. So having to kind of go through, do the research, and then creating correlations of how does that futures number, especially even now in such a dynamic market, where does that correlate to an adder or deduct for the item that you actually use in your market? So there's ways to kind of pull historicals, but it gives you that trend and direction of what you can expect.
And I think you meant to say SPF, not Southern Yellow Pine.
Sorry, yeah.
No worries. Okay. Here's the next question. What can you tell me about methylene diphenyl diisocyanate?
Well, I'm so glad you pronounced it. We were chatting earlier. Even the individuals that sell that product in their items can't even pronounce that last word. But yeah, so kind of the issue with that, and that really kind of raised to the forefront. If you go back to, I'll say, late summer to early kind of fall, we had.
I just so everyone understands, that was kind of a loaded question. That's MDI.
Yeah,
it's the resin that goes into OSB.
Yeah.
So just for us lumber guys, it's resin.
No, exactly. Yeah, I didn't really know that particular resin, other than when you hear about enhanced resin products, whether it be like a Huber's Premium or like a Weyerhaeuser Edge Gold, so the density and the toughness of that resin is not as is not in your commodity item. So basically everything where you're going to have like your OSB rims, your enhanced flooring, and then really on your I-joist on your web stock, that's really where the critical nature of that product is used. It's not, like there's like a phenolic resin, which is kind of your commodity OSB. So it's a totally different strength compound. So your wall sheathing would not basically be impacted by that. So it's just kind of the core commodity items are exempt from that. So it's the kind of premium enhanced items. So kind of the interesting thing, and I've done a little bit more research over the handful of weeks, but in November, there was kind of a shot over the bow that, hey, the hurricanes impacted, there's really kind of 5 main primary manufacturers of the MDI product, 4 of which are in Louisiana and 1's in China. So, and I got some deeper information here in recent weeks where with all the trade and the tariff information, or not information, but all the tariffs that are impacting Canadian and US, is a lot of the companies in Louisiana claimed force majeure here just in recent weeks. So that basically relieved them of their contractual obligations with the disruption, not only from the hurricane, but really that ice storm that came through kind of had a double whammy. They were behind the 8 ball on production in November. And then when the market started to kind of pull back, it kind of just faded away, kind of like dust. It just kind of went away because like, oh, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Everything's easing back. And then when the ice storm hit, it kind of put production that was already behind the 8 ball, kind of behind the 8 ball again. And then now that kind of the dreaded A word of allocation started to kind of hit, whether it be the engineered wood manufacturers, whether it be Boise Cascade or Truss Joist, and then LP's probably been impacted the most as far as trying to find the rim stock. And at least in my market, it's been a horrendous aspect where I've got a few distributors that have been reduced on what they can actually acquire. So they're not even going to be able to sell product to some, I'll say, newer customers if you have not been using their product on like a national commitment level. So
I just heard from one of our users, 40% increase in prices for I-joists from his supplier.
There's been some rumblings, the one thing that I like EWP, but the one thing I hate about them and regarding whether it be glue labs or whether it be EWP is they're really good about giving you a heads up. Yeah, we've got a price increase coming in 30 days. Okay, well, what are we talking about? Well, I'll let you know. And they really don't give you any kind of information, but I've heard anywhere between a 30 to 40% increase, and that was about a month ago. So we had back-to-back price increases as far as EWP in our market here just in the past 60 days. So I expect to see that basically go up again if you can even get your hands on it. So that's going to be a challenge.
So let's talk about that for a second. Get your hands on it. How do you see this impacting your business? And are you going to see jobs get redesigned? Are they going to just get pushed off? What's your anticipation for the situation?
Yeah, so I mean, we deal with because we're in a component manufacturing, we do a lot of roof trusses and floor trusses. So I have not physically had any of our jobs and some of our larger scale jobs stop in regards to just for availability. There's been some delays of other products, not on the wood side, but my gut's giving me this kind of funny feeling that I think by July, we're going to have some projects that just cannot acquire and get wood to basically keep them moving forward just because you're not going to be able to frame up, so you're stuck, and then the price is so elevated, it's like, okay, well, I just need to stop. So we haven't really been directly impacted yet, and the national builders in our market haven't really kind of, I'll say, had to grab the reins and spin their direction and kind of pull back. So in the Seattle Puget Sound market, I'll say we've been exempt thus far, but I'm pretty confident, by the time we hit June or July, you're just not going to be able to get product. So being able to even convert over to a dimensional, you're not going to do that. In Washington, we're dealing with a new energy code coming into play that was supposed to be delayed again due to COVID, and it didn't. So I've got builders now having to kind of redraw their plans. So they're kind of dealing with, kind of a triple whammy, everything from COVID to a new energy code, and now you can't even get product. So if you're going to spec it, what do I spec to? How do I draw it? So it's and we thought 2020 was going to be a struggle. I mean, 2021 is going to be, it's not really asking the question of price. It's going to be, can I even get that product? So I see, as far as EWP and OSB, that's my biggest concern this year, especially in the enhanced resin products.
Yeah, and we've also heard that price increase has not, in certain, from one supplier, or one lumber dealer, the price increase did not change the builder's appetite. They are like full speed ahead. Now, I've just seen we've had an increase in mortgage rates and interest rates. Do you anticipate that could put a little slowdown and stuff?
Yeah, I've been kind of tracking the bonds to kind of see how that impacts the market. And the market just seems to be kind of somewhat, it pays attention, then just ignores it, So the appetite of getting away from the city, especially, everybody heard of the autonomous zone in Capitol Hill where, the rioting. So the kind of exodus out of the city basically made people want to go buy houses, which, we've got builders now that have half of their year's production sold, and they don't even have permits in hand yet. So, that basically puts them at a massive risk right now as far as, your cost basis is not locked in. So the affordability complex, at least in the Seattle market, is only going to rise. So it's going to force, I think it's going to force people back out of the suburbs and back into the cities, just because the price point's not going to allow them. And then it'll their memories will fade from all the disasters that we dealt with all the rioting that we had in the Portland and the Seattle markets. That was kind of seen nationally.
Do you track the repair remodel market much? I know, but when you were at Power Lumber, you had a segment of that. Is that something you got your finger on the pulse of?
I specifically never really tracked that. So the client's idea was they're not really in the kind of R&R business. I do have a lot of people that will kind of read my updates that are focused in that market specifically, but the cost of their projects that use lumber, typically it's the finished goods and the interior design aspects that basically are the bigger ticket items. So it's just a smaller portion, even though we're double the cost today. So it's definitely a bigger piece today. So not a ton on the R&R.
All right, that makes sense. I think that's the market to really pay attention to. When Lowe's just came out with their earnings reports and their overall volume had up 25%. There's no doubt the over-the-shoulder trade is alive and well right now. I think maybe though, as we reopen and these people start going out to dinner and going on vacation, they're not going to want a new deck again.
That's my take. Kind of just watching futures and seeing the vibe is people are just like me. Last weekend I just got done with my report, and my wife and I just boogied out, went down to Olympia, grabbed an Airbnb, and it's like we just want to go out and do something outside of what we've been doing. So I think the draw on some of that, I'll say that homeowner doing the repairs and even the decking and all that it's still going to be. It's strong every year. That's always happens, but I don't really think we're going to see that massive influx that we saw last year, just because people are sick and tired and they want to do stuff. So that's where that money and that stimulus money is going to be spent this year. It's not going to be spent on somebody doing their deck.
All right, 2 questions.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of 3 questions. Up, down, or stay the same? I have this feeling that everyone has become desensitized to pricing. Like, it's no fun to even say this is unprecedented. Well, yeah, everyone knows that. And it almost feels like the reports coming out, and it's like everything's going to be the same for all of 2021, strong prices. All right. So what happens if prices double or go up? Let's say prices go up 50%, call it $1,000, $1,000 right now. We go to 1,500. What do you think?
I don't see 1,500,000. Just for my gut, and this is my experience, is when I look at my charting, when I had to switch everything to log scale on all my graphs, is that basically kind of painted a picture. But, and really, I think this is an interesting week. It's March, and watching just the mill number as far as random lengths sitting at 1025, and it's been holding at that number. And it's like, okay, this is very interesting. It's kind of holding. So I kind of referenced in my report, what's that canary in the coal mine is, that 4 digits is a big number. I don't see on lumber a massive upside risk from now. I can see, I see maybe a short-term pullback, because I think a lot of these companies, even the big boxes, are expecting a monster April, and then going into Memorial Day. It's going to be big, but it's not going to be as big as they think. So I think I think their pantries are fuller than they need to be, in my opinion. So that's going to basically kind of pull back on the purchasing. That's just my opinion. On the sheet goods and the OSB, that's the wild card right now, that there's not enough production, even at the housing takedown rate that we've got in that under 1.5, even though permits were showing, 188 or whatever. So we can't build that many houses, but we still don't have enough production at OSB and sheet goods to take care of current demand. So,
All right, let's say, what if we drop to $500, $400?
if we drop, I think if we drop that severe, I think there's going to be some other aspects in the economy that are going to basically make people scratch their head a little bit. But, everybody needs a place to put their head down at night. They need a house. So houses, if it drops down, I almost expect, some of those earnest money on those forward sales that the builders have, some of those might fall apart, because if it does drop that severe, there's going to be other dynamics, whether it be the stock market kind of pulling back and somewhat of a correction from the all-time highs we're in. So that will have a little bit of a carryover effect. But, I'm bullish on housing through the balance of 2021. And then we'll kind of see once this build cycle is done, and then we'll see. So I don't see a massive amount of upside risk. On the charts that I put out when I talk to people, because everybody's like, well, hey, what's pricing going to do? This is I've got going on. What would you do? And it's like, well, I say, when you're looking at history is bound to repeat itself. When you're looking at a market top and a market bottom, is you can always go above the highs, but you can't expect it to basically go severely through it. And then I think this was brought up in a call that Mike, you and I were involved on, as far as, and it was mentioned here, just even that some of the European products coming into the market, because we specifically in the structural side, we can't use that product, but it's going to take some relief off of whether it be some of the hemlock or even some of the fir logs that basically are what's spec'd out on the engineering side that we are required to use, mainly from some of the seismic requirements as far as how the engineers spec the plan. So until they spec other products in my market, I only have a couple choices to use. It's Doug fir or hem fir. That's what it is. So I can't really do any options as far as substituting products on the structural side, on the skeleton that we provide.
All right, now one really last question.
Yeah.
Speaking of the speccing the design, pulling your crystal ball out and looking at your history, you've went from company to company, and now you're at what I think is a pretty innovative company, especially with your optimized framing system, where you're starting to cut stuff up at the factory and send it out, not in a component, but ready to install.
Correct. Yep.
What do you see coming down the pipeline as far as a different way to do business not normal that we know today, that is going to surprise everyone? I was explaining to a non-lumber person, what's our industry? Well, there's a tree and there's a house, and we sit in between that somehow. And, we're really working hard right now to figure out who to hitch our wagon to, if you would, like who's going to be the one going forward. That's going to get that volume of material to put into the house.
Yeah, I mean, great question, Mike. So with that, so the company I'm at now, Roof Truss Supply, pretty obvious. We're in the truss manufacturing business. The company I spent 10 years with as regional sales manager was Par Lumber. Did not have any manufacturing capacity in the Seattle marketplace, is where I'm at. So with everything from the energy codes, trusses are a main requirement when it comes to building houses. And if you're relying on a third-party vendor for that, that's what made my decision to kind of shift gears into the component side of the equation, because I was in that world prior to going to Par at Woodinville back in the day. But on the pre-cut side, where we call it, it's our kind of our pre-cut framing system. So if you're in other parts of the country, whether it be Builders First Source or even BMC, what they call the ready frame. So if you go back to 1985, so the founder of our company, Roof Truss Supply, Paul Morris, he actually invented the first pre-cut and labeling saw. So there was some of the management team and some of the sales reps at RTS. So that entire program was birthed at RTS and in Woodinville, Washington, way back in the day. So so we actually have something good to be noted for in the Seattle area, other than COVID starting in Kirkland, Washington, only about 10 miles from my house. So I mean, the labor out in the field, everything from the language barrier to just, there's no more framers, at least in my market, they're assemblers, so I basically kind of dumb it down to, hey, if you buy your kid a box of Legos, the box of Legos has pictures and has each piece exactly what it needs to be. So they just take that box of Legos, open up the bag, and they can build whatever it is they're building. And that's exactly how pre-cut is. You basically label it out, you use computer designed to basically kind of give everything from 3D renderings and making it very simple. So you don't even need to be a framer to assemble that, you know, so kind of looking at even DADUs or like detached accessory dwelling units in the city of Seattle that basically add more houses into the tight lots is just componentizing those. So, you know, the city of Seattle has basically made those permit ready. So they can basically buy that. So you can just start work immediately through. So it's already through the permit process. You know, homeowner could build that themselves, have somebody come in and do their foundation, just, you know, just get your foundation in, backfill, get it ready to go and assemble it just like a set of Legos, because, and that's where everybody that's 20, 30 years old, 40 years old, we grew up on Legos. So it just makes sense. So that's how I see things going, is just eliminating and using computers to kind of advance our industry. No different than your platform is. You know, I explained it to people. It's kind of like Craigslist on steroids for building materials. Kind of how I describe it. So.
All right, cool. Does anyone have any questions for Jim? If they do, raise their hand. Now, the easiest way to get their hands on your report now is to.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of getting a website done. So if you just jump onto LinkedIn, you can look me up either through my name or just type in Shoes Lumber Report, and it's free to subscribe. So I've been doing it no cost for 25 years, and that's kind of how we go. So it's pretty simple and easy. And then if you just click on the most recent report, and then if you open it up on the top left-hand side, you'll see a little subscribe button. You hit subscribe, fill in the blanks, and hit subscribe, and you're done. So pretty easy.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, I can't recommend enough taking a look at his report. It's for me, there's a lot of pictures, which picture tells 1,000 words. I like that. And I think the perspective you bring to the table, Jim, as the sell side is a great perspective, because generally, once again, going back to our bubble, we tend to be, you know, the buyers dealing with the buyers at companies only. And it's nice to have a perspective down the supply chain just a little bit. All right, so we're going to wrap that up. I want to just highlight one thing that Ashley said before about selling on our platform, and that the power of the digital network is that you're connected. If you have excess wood and you want to turn it into cash, reach out to us and we can help you move that. Look, I'm a trader at heart. If I would get as much OSB under contract right now as I possibly could, and I would flip it out, because there's a massive premium for prompt OSB for those that are under covered. I have one of our users only has 40% of their need under contract, and they want to buy a ton on open market right now. So, you know, maybe a project gets canceled or a project gets pushed off and you think it could be the end of the world and you're going to lose a bunch of money. The reality is you might be able to get your money in the door faster by flipping it back into the wholesale market. So with that,
all right. Well, thank you very much for that, Michael. And again, it's out of the box thinking, and that's what we're here to provide. We provide a lot of the technology and the ability to do that, to change markets. It is a disruptive marketplace that we're building. And we thank you all for your participation here, and we wish you a great weekend. Just as a reminder, there was a lot of good comments in the chat section. Michelle Cassidy, we wanted to welcome her on board, ALL Roofing out of California. Thank you for your comments, Michelle. And just to everyone again, if you've got any comments or suggestions after the fact, send them along to me. We are recording these calls, and we'll be publishing parts of them or have them as a resource in our training library moving forward. But with that, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend and take care.